I then met him at a couple of conferences in Sweden and had, well, you could call them quarrel, but you can't really quarrel with Randy because he's such an affable person. It's not really possible, but let's say animated discussions. And I maintained that associationist principles were sufficient to understand learning. And Randy went on about timing, and he said that you cannot teach nerve cells to learn time. And I said, yes you can, and he said, no you can't. And of course he knew about the million experimental findings that supported his position, and I had absolutely no ability to follow him there. But I still didn't believe him, and he came to Sweden a second time a few years later. We had the same discussion there. But his arguments kept sort of nagging at the back of my head. I thought he was crazy, but I also had an enormous respect for his fantastic knowledge of the experimental literature, and also for the kind of scientific ethos that he represented, an integrity, courage to follow your own convictions, follow the arguments, even if they make other people think that you're crazy or weird. So I was really impressed by that, and even though I told my friends that he is crazy, he must read him. But anyway, his questions and his objections kept nagging at the back of my mind, and they were a strong impetus for me to design experiments that would really test if nerve cells could learn temporal relation or not. And after many years after I had met Randy, second of those meetings, I managed to test this issue with the help of an extremely competent PhD student, and we found out that Randy had been right. This is not easy to admit, but I had to do it. I had to write a letter to him and send him a manuscript with, I think, that heading, "You were right." And then Randy wrote back, and he was extremely enthusiastic. He came and visited us in Lund, had a look at the experimental data and the setup and so on himself. He's now been to Lund the second time, and he has been the most amazing support that you could ever imagine. His generosity is absolutely amazing. He's also been extremely stimulating. He's no longer an irritant as he used to be, but a stimulant. He gave us a lot of experimental ideas that we are still testing. He has forced me to rethink all my previous positions. He has forced us to question many of the standard assumptions in learning theory. One of my PhD students is now hard at work trying to test one of Randy's ideas that he set out in papers many times. And he's supported us in many other ways as well. We have a huge correspondence, and he's always been very warm, very enthusiastic, very generous. And frankly, I don't know where I'd be without him. So, just thank you, Randy. When I first read those books, I was really shocked about the cognitivistic sins being committed there. Really shocked. Now I see this as the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Thank you.
I'm Marilyn Schatz from the University of Michigan. Several people have already mentioned about the generosity of Randy and Rochel. I'd first like to mention, as far as Rochel is concerned, I would have had a career at the University of Michigan or anywhere else if it hadn't been Rochel, except possibly I could have been a research assistant. When I went back to Penn and kept saying to her, why don't you just hire me as your graduate student when I was an undergrad, as your research assistant when I was an undergraduate. She insisted I go to graduate school. And when we were working together, she also generously said, go and see Lila Gleitman and learn about language from Lila. And that was a wonderful experience as well. When I was ready to graduate, along with several colleagues from this room, like Susan Goldman-Mehta, I remember a wonderful dinner at the townhouse that Randy and Rochel had on Spruce Street of lobsters, very generous to their graduating students. And in the years since, I've had wonderful experiences visiting not only back in Philadelphia, but at UCLA and in New York. Again, they very generously offered their apartment for my family, and wonderful stays in New York, and wonderful dinners together. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have Rochel and Randy as friends and mentors all these years. And I want to say one other thing about the quality that Rochel had. She's a wonderful role model. So first years I went to Michigan, I modeled my courses on hers. I modeled the whole program in developmental psychology on the kinds of pro seminars I had at Penn. And I also learned how to mentor junior faculty. And thank you so much, both of you, for all that.
My name is Chris Massey, and I am one of the children here. Rochel was my graduate advisor, and I could echo many of the things everybody's been saying about her generosity, her mentorship, her support. But I'm actually going to make my comments in another role. I'm the Director of Research and Education at the Institute for Research in Cognitive Science at Penn, which is a sister institute of the Rutgers Cognitive Science Center. And I know a lot of us here on this occasion are marking your retirement from RuCCS, but you played an enormously important role in the founding of RuCCS, as one of our original co-founders is here as well, Isla Gleitman. I think a lot of people in this room probably remember the Sloan brown bag lunches. See a couple of smiles. That intellectual foundation that was taking place really created the conditions that allowed the Institute for Research in Cognitive Science at Penn to come into being, and possibly, I would say, in the field at large. So her legacy really includes much more than the center here at RuCCS. And a lot of people from Penn are sending their greetings and their good wishes. And on behalf of RuCCS, I just wanted to offer you our felicitations.
Hi, I'm Morris Moskovich. I'm married to one of Rochel's students, and Paul's for that matter. There is one thing that I want to thank Rochel for, and that is the advice that she gave me as I was leaving Penn to take a job. And it was terrific advice. She said, don't volunteer for any committees. And if you get on one, do the worst job possible. I actually was such a bungler that people wouldn't even nominate me to be on a committee until I turned 55. By then I was actually very good, and I'm on far too many committees now, and had somewhat forgotten Rochel's advice until this moment. I should have listened to her all the way through. Thanks, Rochel.
That must have been standard Penn advice because I got the same.
Hi, my name is Adam King, and I, like others here, have a sort of before Randy and after Randy existence, and it changed dramatically. I'm actually very fond of both Randy and Rochel, but I'm going to focus on Randy because he's the one I've spent by far the most time with. I came to UCLA in '89, and my before Randy days, I was smoking heavily the neural net ganja. And we were all drunk on the power of computers at that time. We really thought with neural networks. I even went farther down the abstraction ladder there of silliness, which is I was in artificial life. So we were actually simulating evolution and sexual reproduction and things. But anyway, in that effort, I was trying to evolve neural networks, and I studied a little bit of psychology and was convinced, yeah, conditioning, this makes sense. We've got to figure out a way to evolve this and understand how it will come about naturally. So I set my mind to finding natural tasks that animals would solve that I could simulate so I could evolve the classical conditioning phenomenon. I couldn't find any. Nothing, I studied the literature and nature, and nothing seemed to duplicate the ringing the bell, salivating with the meat stuff. So my advisor said, go talk to this guy, Brian Gallistel. He knows a lot about what animals do. So I went over there and I sat down with him, and he told him my background, and I told him what I was looking for, that I needed this problem that animals would solve that would lead to classical conditioning. And he sort of looked at me bemused when I told him the whole background. I'm sure he was wondering what the heck is going on over there in computer science. And he said, "You're not going to find it. It's not there." "What are you talking about?" And then he handed me his big book, and that was like a 1.5 year detour in graduate school. But anyway, I hooked up with Randy, and he's had a hard time getting rid of me since. I basically glommed onto him, and he got me through. I barely made it through graduate school. I mean, I thought about quitting a number of times, and he really held on to me. We worked through that stuff. With Randy, I had my first paper published. I got tenure, and not tenure yet. I got my dissertation done and my defense. And actually, Randy really saved me at the defense. I think it was, I don't know how Randy felt, but I think it was, wavering a little bit. And I had at least two of them there that were really going at me. And I told one of my friends afterwards, I described the whole scenario at the oral presentation. I basically did it like a football game where I was running down the football towards the end zone, and all the other guys were coming at me, and Randy would come out and block this guy and tackle this guy. And, it was pretty wonderful. I remember at some point one of them asked me a question about could the clock, I was working with timing and neural networks, and asked me if the clock could be affected by anything. And I said, well, I think actually heavy water, if you ingest it, it can have this effect on your clock. I must have picked that up somewhere. And Randy very loudly said, "Wow, I'm really impressed. I had no idea he would know something like that." So I think he was really helping me out there. I was really worried I wasn't going to get all those signatures on the paper. But anyway, I stuck with Randy, and it's been an amazing experience. He continued to basically get me through life here with publications. I did a lot of research with Randy. Tenure of my first job, first book, and now my second job. I'm starting a new position. So Randy's been there the whole way, and we can talk a lot about his intellectual capabilities, and they're substantial, and I've learned a tremendous amount from him. But by far, what's really impressed me and been an incredibly positive experience for me in life is Randy's humanity. I don't have a better way of really putting that, but I saw a lot of bad behavior of professors in the graduate program, and I saw how things could go down. And I was very lucky to get hooked up with Randy. It was night and day. I mean, here was a person who really cared about me, talked about what did I really want, helped me with heading in the direction that I wanted to go in. And, really was a person for me, a first real mentor, in fact, and, sort of an intellectual father figure for sure. And he opened up his family and his house and his friendship to me like a lot of us here. So I want to thank both of them for their caring for me during this time. But particularly I want to thank Randy for being an exemplary academic. I mean, he really does it the right way. He's brilliant, he researches, he publishes well, he teaches well. I went the teaching route, so I became more of a teacher than a researcher. But he was very serious about his teaching as well, and he really cared about getting his graduate students through, which was unusual. He didn't hold on to them. He set a limit. He said, "You're going to get this done." And when I didn't do it, he put the fire under my butt. And that really, really helped. So thank you very much, Randy. I really appreciate it.
I'm Ken Chenko. Save me, some time during my talk. I'll give a little spiel now. Thanks, Paul, for your presentation. I owe Paul a little bit because I started writing funny skits and whatnot at his house for the Christmas plays. And that started making me a very popular teacher. I have to go back on Saturday right after this occasion, because I'm going back to give a lecture, the one musical lecture in my repertoire. I have a musical lecture now on perception. But I was one of Randy's students, 1980 to 1984. One of the first, perhaps the first, that worked on spatial things. So that was sort of a side project for everyone. But I actually met Rochel first, before I met Randy. The first occasion was at the University of Toronto, when she was a colloquium speaker. I was an undergraduate. I was one of those undergraduates who went to pretty much every colloquium. I I'm not sure we would invite. I might even ask questions because I do that. So she probably doesn't remember because nobody then. So I was at Harvard, but not happy there, and it was, I guess, another connection. Dan Osherson sent me down to actually have a visit, and I remember Rochel was then the graduate director. She was for the first, I don't know, few years while I was there. I remember, so I had made a whole lot of visits, and Rochel's last words to me was, after all the tour and so on, she wasn't, and I don't know if you remember this, she said, as I was going back to Boston, and she said, think about it, make the right decision. Remember saying that to me? Yes, well, I think I made the right decision. I went to Penn, I studied with Randy, and Randy must have been very patient with me. On paper, I had a lot of brilliance. It took a lot of time to actually get anything. Like 3 years, we didn't really have any proper data. All the data were turning out wrong. And it turns out that the rats were doing something that I hadn't seen for like 3 years. And I don't know if you remember that meeting in 1983. I actually came in and thought, these rats doing something weird. They're doing
very well.
That was.
You had a smile on your face. You knew you'd seen something very important. I remember
Yes.
very well.
And what I remember Randy saying was, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting." And I went on several times anyway. I got some help too from Randy, so after that, this paper, of course, became quite well cited. And I think one of the reasons that there's a whole chapter on it in the even better cited, around 1990 book called Organization of Learning, and probably had about 3 citations before 1990, I don't really know. But after that, it sort of took off, so that's probably instrumental in my career, and also thanks to Liz, because Liz worked on it in humans, and then suddenly, half the cognitive developmentalists were looking at this paper. So I got a lot of support from my Penn connection for this work. I guess the last time we met was in Sydney. I don't remember which year. So we had dinner together. The only one that was in my hometown that I got to treat them, because I met them in LA maybe once or twice. They always feel they had to treat me because I was a visitor, so it's very good in Sydney to actually treat them on my stomping grounds. 2009, Randy wrote a review paper about statistical methods for testing the null hypothesis. A very impressive paper. Sort of around the start of this whole Bayesian statistics revolution, which is taking over a lot of psychological science these days. So that's helped me now in my stead as an editor. So I often tell people who just accept the null hypothesis, say, no, that's not good enough. You have to actually do a test to see that the null hypothesis is better. And I usually refer to them as a start. Please look at Gallistel's paper in 2009. So I want to thank Randy and Rochel both for, basically for my career.
My name is Susan Golden Meadow. I was part of Penn during the golden years that Paul talked about. In fact, when Paul just reminded me how much fun Penn was at that time. It was not just intellectual fun, but just fun. You guys taught us how to think, but you also taught us how to respect other people, and respect people in a joyous way. And I think Randy and Rochel were a huge component of that. It was a very, very important part of my training. So there are two parts to what I want to say. For Rochel, it's so clear to me that your generosity, your support, I've never ever felt unsupported by you. Unsupported by you, always, always. And I think for me the most telling moment was at the University of Chicago, where it was sometimes a little rocky. And when I looked like I was headed for posthumous tenure, you remember, right? Yeah, well, you stuck by me to the end, and eventually I got tenure before posthumous. And it was really support from you, also from Lila, that was just incredible. But so my debt to you is obvious, and really very clear, but I have a debt to Randy that I bet you don't know. You guys, our pro-sem year, Peter may remember this too. You taught a pro-seminar, you and Phil Teichbaum and Norm Adler. I think it was the first time the three of you taught together. It was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. I don't think the students said a word, frankly. The three of you talked all the time, and we learned so much. Martha McClintock was there too. When Martha and I then came to Chicago, we tried to replicate. I think we all are attempting to replicate what you guys gave to us. But we tried to function, mechanism, levels of analysis. We still do it. And that's the debt that I owe to Randy and to Rochel. It's hard to even express how important you guys have been to my intellectual history, but also to so many. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Earl Williams, and I first came to the family as a undergraduate at Sandys, and then ultimately as a PhD student of Rochel's, and then had the rare privilege, I believe, in this room of having both Randy and Rochel on my doctoral committee, so that was wonderful. As a prodigal grandson and son who eventually left academia, I will offer two small stories of their generosity and my gratitude to the metaphor is this pile of wrapping paper, all the gifts that I and others have unwrapped from them. So the first is that in 1994, maybe 5, Paul visited UCLA, and Rochel invited me to accompany them to lunch at the faculty club. And as we walked over, Paul asked me, well, what do you want to do with your life? I said, well, I want to be a professor when I'm finished. And the wise, and I imagine you all know better than I, ever irascible Paul, said, no you don't. If you wanted to be a professor, you'd be one. So, and so it came to pass that I did other things, and I'm now a civilian scientist for the Navy. And so all those years of O&R funding to Rochel actually directly led to a Navy person. The second gratitude moment for me is that because of severe developmental disabilities of my first daughter, my wife and I both shelved our UCLA graduate careers and moved away. But a year, 2 years after I had left, I got a phone call saying, you know that teaching award that you came very close to winning the year that you left? Well, we resubmitted you, and this year you won. And that provided a dissertation year fellowship that allowed me to finish, and I'm sure that both Rochel and Patricia Greenfield, who actually made the call, were instrumental in making that happen, and so I owe a tremendous amount to both of you, and to Rochel for being a wonderful advisor. I say thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Osnat Zor, and I feel like my story is another testimony to everything else that was said here about both of you. But my story is with Rochel. It started when I was an undergrad at UCLA, 1994, 95. I'm taking a class with Rochel, and I'm very inspired. I remember that feeling of, yeah, she's challenging Piaget. And inspired and wanting to know more how children count and what's their mathematical reasoning looks like. And that passion that he started today sticks with me till this day. I was starting to visit the classroom at UCLA Childcare Services. We had information that there is some good stuff going on, that the teacher is leading different math activities. And I spent a lot of hours just observing the children and what they're doing. And running to Rochel's office to tell her all those wonderful things that the kids were doing. And Rochel is like, yeah, you're like John Goodell of the chimpanzees, sitting and watching the children doing all the mathematical stuff. Later on, I'm coming to, I graduated as an undergrad, and my parents are visiting from Israel, and I'm coming to show them the campus around. And the first person I see when I'm walking by Fran's home, the tech department, is Rochel. And she says, oh, Zach, what are you doing now? I just had my firstborn baby with me. And I said, I'm home with the baby. Do you want to walk? I'm like, sure, I would love to. Okay, let's call me tomorrow. I think we can do some more work on math and science. And that's how things have not started, but continued. I joined the Gelman lab. I feel like I'm still in the Gelman lab in some way, being part of that family. I joined the UCLA graduate program, inspired by Rochel's work, and continuing to do more work on early math and early science. I feel like everyone, I want to say thank you, of course, but I also want to say thank you on behalf of all the children. Because when I'm experiencing day-to-day my work, when I'm developing benchmarks, when I'm designing curriculum framework, when I'm providing professional development to teachers, and when I'm videotaping in the classes to create resources for teachers, I really get to see the influence. I really get to see how all the work that you've done, your theoretical foundation, or your intellectual basis that we have inherited, is now translated and is applied, and how young children benefit, and that we realize that rights they have to be viewed as competent. And it's that your research and your work that has inspired us and has led to that. So if a decade ago, for example, the notion of preschool science curriculum or early childhood STEM conference barely existed, I can tell you that in California this year, I've already participated in 2 early childhood STEM conferences. And it's all, again, the inspiration of Rochel's work. So on behalf of Children Rochel, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a pioneer and inspiration in revealing young children's competencies.
I want to say one thing about Zor. We ended up labeling her the Jane Goodall of preschool. She just would hang out day after day after day, watching to see what the kids were doing that could then be turned into an experimental task. And that's how we came to the paper, Zor and Gelman, but other things. And the real important message, you can't work with young children if you don't spend a lot of time watching them. And she knew that. Thank you.
So we're going to go to the reception outside, but before we do, I want to read you 2 messages that have come from each of your students from a distance away, from Jay McClellan and Randy Feldman. So from Jay, Randy discusses ideas with great verve and always with a special twinkle in his eye. I think we've heard that many times today, even though we've often disagreed. I learned quite a lot and always enjoy a chance to discuss our alternate perspectives. His work on brain stimulation captured my imagination during my first year in graduate school, but it was his ideas about the organization of action that really opened up my perspective on the organization and function of the brain. My lab is now using the scalar variability data productively to understand several aspects of number processing and representation. Thank you, Randy.
and from Heidi, beginning of my career. She accepted my seminar paper a little bit late and found it really interesting. She advocated for my return to Penn as a grad student. She was supportive when I decided to go to med school, and then thought about me for leadership opportunities as a clinical scientist. So I don't think any of these are surprising things that people would say. What a great model for a teacher, mentor, and friend. And they both say together, congratulations, Rochel and Randy, on your many successes for over half a century in science. So we've heard the first half of their half a century in science today, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow.
First on to the reception.
But first on to the reception, and for those of you who are going to the dinner, there are shuttles that are going there at 6, 6:15, and 6:30 at Swift Union Program.
Thank you.
Thank you.